right, let's open it up, guys. Tony Khan's going to stay here and field some questions from you guys.
Renee and Tone Zone.
That's right.
Well, like I said, I've been waiting for a while. I haven't asked a question on this scrum.
Good to see you, Corey.
That's good to see you, Tony. Corey Lee with the Wrestling Observer. Two quick questions. First, how are the pay-per-view buys looking in regard, and also the gate? And then the second question I have is, we are now, I think, in the second area of the pay-per-view where Bleacher Report is not part of your pay-per-view audience. Has there been a drop-off? Have you noticed anything different about where the buys are coming from, either from the TV or some of the other, like Triller and YouTube and all that other stuff?
Well, you gave me a great segue. So to answer your, I'll go to the second question first because it was a really good question, Corey. It's been huge for us because now for over 5 years, Bleacher Report since the beginning, BR Live originally, then Bleacher Report had been the exclusive digital domestic pay-per-view arm for a long time, for the most part, for the better part of 5 years. And it was a huge change at WrestleDream, and that's why we were so excited about the WrestleDream buys, because really we needed cable, satellite, and all of our digital providers to really pick up, and that's why we were so happy to do a really good number for WrestleDream. Tonight now, because Bleacher Report was such a huge part of our same night projections, because it's Warner Brothers Discovery, it's our business partner, we got lots of really good data and able to project because we don't necessarily get all the cable and satellite buys. Now cable and satellite have become, for now, in this time, maybe a bigger piece, as have all of the digital providers, YouTube, Triller, BBB.com, all picking up more of the domestic streaming slack now, and we're expecting all these different providers. But for many years, we pushed everything to Bleacher Report. So I was really, really happy with WrestleDream. I'm not sure yet on tonight. I don't really have all the numbers yet. I'm very optimistic. I strongly suspect better than WrestleDream, and therefore really, really well. It's an exciting time for us. Last year, WrestleDream also performed really well, and to come in this year for the second year of WrestleDream, we were really excited without Bleacher Report to do good numbers. I expect tonight Full Gear will also do great, probably even better than WrestleDream, and then expect we'll close out really strong with World's End. And next year we'll be launching a new pay-per-view platform during the year, and when we go to Max, that's going to be really exciting too for our fans. Thanks for asking, for it.
Hi, Tony. Kimmy Sokol with the Pop Break. So in a couple weeks, you guys are actually going to be doing Collision from GalaxyCon.
Yes.
You also had some involvement with San Diego Comic-Con, so I was wondering if that is something you were looking to do more in 2025, involvement with Pop Culture Con.
Absolutely. We've had great experiences. Going to San Diego Comic-Con was tremendous. We're really grateful to Warner Brothers Discovery and all the great PR people in AEW and at Warner Brothers Discovery who helped put it together going to Comic-Con. We had great experience doing the panel, and we even put on a show there. Sometime I'd like to show it to you. Hopefully we get all the clearances for the Adult Swim, but the Adult Swim tag team tournament we had there was a lot of fun. If we ever get the rights to all those Adult Swim characters, I hope to show it all to you someday. We're really excited about going to GalaxyCon in December. It's a great opportunity for us in Columbus, Ohio to work with these great partners, and we had a great experience with Comic-Con. I think GalaxyCon is going to be great, and it's exciting that we get to bring it live on Collision on TNT on Saturday, December 7th in Columbus. Thanks for asking.
Mr. Khan, how you doing, my brother?
Hey, I'm very well. How are you?
I apologize for my best friend's outburst. I've known him half my life, man. You know what I mean? And Barry, one of the greatest wrestlers alive in the lost prey. So my apologies, sir. Two-part question, brother. Listen, you've done such a great job with independence and gaining talent through that way. You know what I mean? And getting some up and comers to your company. Then I see WWE come up with this new advent of WWE ID. Do you feel like that's kind of hindering and hampering like how you going about business on the independent circuit? Are they snatching up all kinds of wrestlers like Pokemon? Is that bothering you? Is it ruffling your feathers? How things working out?
Well, it's interesting. I don't really know how it's going to work. I understand there's some kind of first right or refusal aspect of it. We haven't really come up where it's been a conflict yet, but I do think it's definitely going to affect the independent scene in some ways. We've had a really great experience here over the years bringing in young wrestlers. Through the pandemic, the best place for independent wrestlers to get work was at AEW and on AEW Dark and Elevation. And it's sitting here with somebody who's now the TNT champion sitting with Garcia, somebody who came in Daly's place and was working on Dark and working on Elevation and started teaming with 2.0 at the time and built this friendship with Daddy Magic that's lasted. To see now Daniel Garcia as the TNT champion, somebody who was a top independent wrestler, came in, wrestled on Dark, and has now worked his way into the top and is going to be competing in the Continental Classic, and somebody who's had this incredible 2024 and is now the TNT champion. It's a really, really exciting thing. And I think the women and men in AEW, we've seen so many great wrestlers work their way up from the independents. We've signed big free agents along the way too, and we have a lot of our homegrown day one people. It's a great mix. And I expect we'll keep signing great talent off the independents. I do think it's a different mechanism, so it's something to keep an eye on. It hasn't really created any major conflicts or anything yet, but I imagine it will definitely influence the independent wrestling scene. It's definitely something to keep an eye on. Thanks for asking.
Tony, to follow up real quick on the Costco stuff. This is one of the bigger cross-platform integrations that AEW has done. And one of the biggest things we hear in wrestling discourse all the time is the casual fan. And how do you reach that? You famously talk about the sickos. What is your approach to the idea of the casual fan? Does that exist? And how do you go about trying to reach that if so?
I love reaching the casual fan. I was at a business conference in Santa Barbara and I was just having fun. And I don't know if everyone knows, I was just paraphrasing Tommy Boy. He says he makes car parts for the working man in America. That's what he is and that's what he cares about. Well, I'm a sicko wrestling fan, but I care about the casual wrestling fans. I care about anybody who watches wrestling. I myself got into watching wrestling through, as a little kid, through watching people doing entertainment shows. And a lot of you have probably heard this before, but I'm guessing there's at least 5 or 6 people in here who've never heard this before. I grew up watching wrestling. What got me into it was I was a huge fan of G.I. Joe, and Sergeant Slaughter was the live action host of G.I. Joe. He would do the wraparounds, and he was a voice actor doing the animated character. I thought that was really cool and interesting. Then I found out he was a wrestler. I'd never actually seen wrestling. I just watched G.I. Joe Monday through Friday after school, 5 days a week or in the summer. And then, and he's a big part of the G.I. Joe movie too, you know, Nemesis Enforcer, and Falcon, Don Johnson. And then I watched the A-Team. Hulk Hogan was on the A-Team. Somehow on the A-Team, we're supposed to believe in the mid-'80s that Hulk Hogan and Mr. T were in Vietnam together. Talk about suspending disbelief. But we were all buddies from Nam. But, you know, I love G.I. Joe, I love the A-Team. So here I go, and I started watching, and then quickly I got into other wrestlers. And then not long after that, I also started watching wrestling on TBS with WCW. I started reading wrestling magazines every time I went to the supermarket. I got completely addicted to it, and it really started through G.I. Joe and the A-Team. And then within months, I was obsessed with wrestling, but that's what brought me into the bubble. And I hope, whether it's, I don't know the exact number, but I do believe there are going to be some kids and some young people and just some fans of all ages and backgrounds that probably had not watched a lot of wrestling that really like Big Boom AJ and Big Justice and the Rizzler, which is really cool because it's a family that is about just positivity. Like, you know, if anybody has anything negative to say about those guys, maybe they just have a negative outlook on a lot of things in life, because when you actually talk to those guys and actually if you give them a chance, they're nothing but good, positive energy. And I really mean what I say, that it is a blessing to work with a father and son that have that kind of relationship and they get to spend that kind of time together to see what a mentorship it is and what a great job he's doing raising Justice. And I never met the Rizzler before today, but he's a really nice kid. I love that family, and working with them, it's been excellent. And it really helps. AJ's a wrestler. Whether he's been out of it for 20 years or not, it's different than bringing somebody, you know, that's on the cast of a Broadway musical, or somebody that's playing sports, you know, a player from basketball or baseball, bringing an athlete in. It's different. He's a wrestler. And he brought that wrestling mindset to social media. What's amazing to me is they built all this since this January and this following. At first, I really, even though I've done a few TikToks, but I don't spend all day on it. And I'm not the expert by any means. But I could see this was working. I had friends that had never reached out to me about wrestling. People that I went to school with, like, that I've known since I was like 13, 14 years old, that I could never get them to watch wrestling. They would be the guys in the corner when the rest of us were watching the wrestling when I was a kid, and I was able to be the virus-spreading fan that I've always really been. and I could spread it to some, there were some people you could never reach. And what's amazing to me is some of those people have been texting me this week, and it's like, I've never gotten you to watch AEW in 5 years, and you're so excited about the Rizzler ringing the bell. That is amazing. And so I do think it has captured some people, and I think it's great. And there's absolutely only positive things to say about that family and what they bring to us. I'm really grateful they came into our lives, and I think it's really cool that they've had so much success, and I'm grateful they brought it here and hopefully introduced some new fans to AEW, and good luck covering the New York Knicks this year, John.
Thanks, Tony.
Hey, Tony, Matthew Wilson from 3-2 Wrestling. How you doing? Thank you for
Very
taking
well.
my question. I have a question about your AEW World Champion, John Moxley, actually. Recently in the New York Post, John Moxley was quoted talking about how tough it may be for newer talent to climb the ladder to success, and that in his new version of AEW, he wants to grab them by the shoulder and walk them to where they need to be. Now, storyline aside, as your AEW champion, how great does it feel to have an AEW champion who cares so much about the future of AEW and wants to walk them to success?
It's the greatest thing in the world. I'm very fortunate to, first of all, work in AEW, and I'm very fortunate to work in a company where we have the 4-time world champion, and it's the 4th time that John Moxley is the champion. All 4 times it has made the company better, and even though Bryan Danielson is probably my best friend in the entire world, the fact is I've worked with John Moxley a long time too, and even though I don't agree necessarily with what happened to Bryan Danielson, I miss him every day. I miss working with him every day. John Moxley is so great for this business, and we need John Moxley, and I have to accept what happened. I also have to say that all 4 times John's been the champion, it has been straight up. He's been nothing but positive for the business of the company. And then backstage, you're absolutely right about what you said, and then you look at the effects and you see what's happening. Private Party, John beat the hell out of those guys, and they've always beat up by John, Claudio, Pac, and the Death Riders. I really think that we saw the best version of Private Party we've ever seen. The most confident, they've been through hell, and they stepped up and they went through the fire. And I do think John Moxley had a lot to do with that, and that's a good example of it. And I think it's only the beginning, but I do think all 4 times John Moxley's been the world champion of AEW, very great things happen. He's quite possibly the most important figure in the history of the company. Thank you.
Tony, Liam, Crowley with Screen Rant, excuse me.
Oh, Screen Rant.
Screen Rant, yes sir, new company. Anyways, I want to check in on the status of 2 wrestlers who are active now, but active in different companies, it seems like, while still being AEW talent. Ricky Starks recently got a match announced for GCW, and Kenny Omega is going to wrestle at Wrestle Dynasty against Gabe Kidd. Both of those guys, huge crucial parts to AEW over the past 5 years. I'm just curious when we're going to see both of them back in AEW ring specifically.
Well, I think we got to keep an eye on the future, not to give away things, but very excited about having our stars participate in other promotions. And you mentioned Wrestle Dynasty. I think we see Kenny Omega will be competing for Wrestle Dynasty. Is actually a collaboration. It's New Japan Pro Wrestling, but it's working with ROH, Stardom, and AEW. And that's going to be a great show. We're very excited about that. We have a lot of really cool things coming in January. Kenny Omega and Ricky Starks both been great champions here in AEW. Kenny Omega from day one. We're just talking about John Moxley, the important figures, the great world champions in AEW. We wouldn't be here without Kenny Omega. And that's definitely something to keep an eye on for the future when some more of these great stars will be back in AEW. Now, if you were in the arena right now, and if we were the fans, you'd be getting a "This is Screen Rant" chant.
My new bosses will appreciate that.
This is Screen Rant.
There we go.
Looking ahead to 2025 and with the scheduling of certain buildings, it looks like you took a more unique approach in scheduling buildings in 2025 for TV tapings. What's the strategy behind
it?
It
Makes total sense to me. One of the buildings we're going to run, Josh, and it's good to see you, Josh, is Cedar Park, Austin, Texas. That building is perfect. Every show we've ever done there, I have loved. It was the second building we ran after we went back on the road post-pandemic. And I've always loved that building, and I want to find that great market around Austin, Texas. And I'm thinking, let's go into the best markets and find buildings like that, where it's going to be packed and red hot, and we get that kind of energy. So we're going to great towns. running great buildings, and that's the energy I want at all the shows. And so Cedar Park specifically, I wanted to go back to Austin, Texas, and I wanted to get that kind of energy at all the shows. And I think it'll be really exciting. There's going to be some really cool things coming up. I've never been to Hammerstein Ballroom in my entire life, and I cannot wait for that. And then after that, we're going to start the simulcast era. If you didn't see the ads tonight, it's going to be the mother of all simulcasts on January 1st, and it's going to be really cool. We're going to make history in pro wrestling in Asheville, Fight for the Fallen. We're going to do it for a great cause, and we'll be the first wrestling show ever to simulcast, streaming and cable, TBS and Max, and excited to make history in some great venues. Thanks for asking, Josh.
How's it going? John Kiernan from the Ropes and Riffs podcast. It's been something unique that you guys did by using the November Rain music and creating music videos to hype up Full Gear. What was the impact of using November Rain in the promo package, and can we expect more of that with licensed music like that?
Well, we use a lot of licensed music here historically, and I think that this was a great example. You know, that song has been used in the past to promote events. This was the first time anybody actually properly compensated Guns N' Roses, and it's the only time that the video will survive on a streaming service, because we'll use the song in perpetuity, and it'll always be part of the TV and the Full Gear, and it'll always be part of the library in perpetuity. So that's pretty cool. It was a great video, I thought, and then we were able to use it again, and I can tell you now, we're going to use it again this week, because we're still in the month of November. We're going to look back at Full Gear, and we're going to look into the Continental Classic this week as we approach the Continental Classic. Tomorrow night, we'll look at a selection special. We'll start announcing participants for the Continental Classic and Selection Sunday, and I'm very excited about using November Rain again. I think that it was impactful, and I think there were great results. I think a lot of things came together, whether it's the great stars, the great champions, having that cultural moment, getting Big Boom AJ and the Rizzler and Big Justice out, and really going out and having AJ and Big Justice out hitting the pavement hard. I think that really helped us a lot, and I do think the November Rain was a big part of it. Today was a huge success. We had over 10,000 people here. Really a great night for AEW, and I think everybody as a team came together, and I do think like the November Rain was a great aspect, and also it was an experiment for me as a ratings move for the last 9 minutes of a collision to be a music video. It's a big risk. It did really well. Looking at the minute-by-minute ratings, I was really happy. I mean, the quarter hour on the aggregate, you guys have all probably seen the quarter hour, and I'm looking at the minute-by-minute ratings. It did really well. So I was like breathing a sigh of relief that the 9-minute video performed so well, and I think it was a great thing because it showcased a lot of the great stories in AEW. You know, Paul Walter Hauser had been filming a movie, and he watched the video and he said, like, you know, I'd been filming this movie and I was on set. I didn't get to see every episode, and it tied together everything for me so perfectly for him to come back in tonight as a commentator and get a Golden Globe Award winner and an Emmy Award winner to do the commentary on the show with Renee and RJ. It was pretty cool. And so many people reached out to me about that music video. I think it did a lot of great things to us, and tonight was a big success for a lot of reasons that came together as a team. And we're very grateful to Guns N' Roses.
Hey, Tony, Eric at the Adventures in Collecting podcast. So you mentioned wanting to reach those casual fans, and your kind of tie-ins to wrestling through G.I. Joe, and as we've been talking about a lot tonight, action figures as a way to kind of get kids, get a younger audience, reach that kind of casual fan.
Yep.
You guys have flourished with Jazzwares over the years. The figures that they're putting out are great. The play sets. One thing we haven't seen is some of the iconic vehicles that have been featured on TV. So whether it's the golf cart, whether it's Sue's van, or in the lead up tonight, the scapegoat bus. So what are your thoughts on maybe getting some larger set pieces and vehicles made?
It's a great idea. I think it's a great idea. I hadn't thought about it, but I think you have a great point. There's been some great vehicles and some great vehicular moments in AEW. So it's something to keep an eye on. It's a great point. And when you get experts in collectibles and toys in here, you get great ideas. So you guys have had some great thoughts on that tonight, and that's a good point.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Tony. Your energy is so positive and inspiring, and it clearly resonates throughout the entire company. So in an industry where people in a high position of authority or power often do unsavory things, how do you manage such a high level of success and communicating with so many people while maintaining a sense of integrity and not losing your soul?
I really love the work, and I'm a people person, and I am also very analytical. You know, I really love to go through data, but I also love to work with people, and I think it's served me well. I think it's served me well starting in an executive role pretty young, and I've been able to keep my enthusiasm now, and for a 42-year-old executive, I have a lot of experience, and have been a sporting director in English football for 9 years, and have been going almost 9 years now, in my 9th season, and have been very blessed to do this for 5 years and loved every minute of it. And I just great. And when you work in a sport that's 52 weeks a year, I'm really fortunate. I haven't had a week off since Christmas 2019. I haven't had a week off in 5 years, and I'm very blessed because I think it helps keep the energy up. I don't want to get off the treadmill. I absolutely love it because it's so fun, because you get to come, and I really enjoy the people I work with. There are absolutely challenging moments, there are challenging experiences, but I love it. It's wrestling, and we're all very fortunate to be here, and I try to maintain that mindset and be very grateful. Tonight's one of those nights where it's like, there's over 10,000 people, they're going crazy, you have all these great moments, and there's so many great things happening in the company, and when you do it 52 weeks a year with no break, it's really, really special when you hit these high points, because you grind for weeks to reach a moment like this, the pay-per-view, and there's been so many great moments that we talked about, the video package, for 9 minutes of November Rain, to see all these great things that built to tonight, and then have tonight be such a great success. That's what makes it so great. And then I get to go home for Thanksgiving and do it on Wednesday night in Chicago. So thank you very much for asking.
We'll do 2 more questions for Tony.
Hey Tony, any update on Adam Copeland on his injury?
It's a great question. Adam Copeland, we've been missing him very, very much. He was doing so great this year for us as the TNT champion. We really missed the Rated R Superstar very much, and I can't wait to hopefully at some point in the near future get him back. It was really a devastating thing, and we're very blessed to have such a great roster in AEW because everybody really stepped up, and when you lose somebody so valuable to the team like Adam Copeland, it's always going to hurt, and as soon as we can get him back, it's going to make a huge positive difference to have Adam Copeland back on this team. Thank you for asking. We really missed the Rated R Superstar, and that was one of those really hard things that happened at the MGM Grand at Double or Nothing when we lost Adam from the roster temporarily, and whenever he gets back, we're going to be so excited. Thank you for asking. I got maybe 2 more because I have my friend here.
Hello, DJ D. Creasy from Russell Bars. Is there anything from the 80s era that you would like to bring back? Like, let's say, the ice cream or like something like classic like that?
Something from the 80s? Yeah, there's music. I mean, I like music. There's music. I have an idea. I have an idea for next year. I don't want to say what it is. You'd never, it's like so, you know, it's so random, but I think it would work really, really, really well. I have an idea. In fact, like, if we do it in 2025 and you ask me about this, I'm bringing back something from the 80s, and I say it's pretty out there, like, you'll all know what I'm talking about when it happens. So, but it's just music.
Well, let's say like Russell Bars, like ice cream.
Sure. I mean, to me, that's even, that's even the 90s, because that's what I grew up on tapes like that and vignettes like that. But I have some ideas for something we could bring back from the 80s, actually, to start 2025. So let's see if it works out, but I'm positive about it. Thank you for asking.
Thank you, Tony. Justin D'Orazio with Sports Radio 94 WIP in Philadelphia. AEW this year has had the tall task of retiring 2 legends of pro wrestling, of course Sting and Bryan Danielson, who ended his full-time career. What has AEW learned from the enormous appreciation from Revolution and positive feedback to Sting's retirement, and a little bit of pushback to the violent nature that Bryan Danielson was retired with?
Well, I think they're very different moments. Both of them got this incredible high point, and 2 of the greatest nights of my entire life happened this year. I think AEW, what a year we're having on pay-per-view, first of all. Like, home run after home run on pay-per-view. And when you look at the shows on the aggregate, first of all, I think wrestling is about the major nights, major moments like this, big TV shows, and particularly these big pay-per-view shows. And what a year we're having on pay-per-view. I mean, look back to Revolution, and it's one of the greatest nights in the history of the company. We've had so many great shows since. And to me, I think I've had some great moments in football and the Premier League, working in English football, some of the greatest nights and moments of my life. And in wrestling, I do think, and in just my whole life, probably two greatest nights easily could be Sting's retirement in Greensboro, being there and all those great moments paying off, and 3 years of Sting in AEW culminating back where it started, going back to Greensboro, setting every business record ever in Greensboro that night, and having Sting do it with Ric Flair and Ricky Steamboat by his side. It was really cool. It was really cool for all of them, and it was the best. It was the best, and then probably the highlight of it all, me personally, professionally, I mean the night, the wrestling and all was a highlight, but for me a personal highlight would be when Sting put his hand on my shoulder and what he said to me right before he went out to the ring, which I will always remember and appreciate. And then another highlight for me, Bryan Danielson at Wembley Stadium. He wasn't able to be with us the year before, and for him to have that moment with his family, and for Bryan to tell me that was his best moment in wrestling, all the wrestling Bryan's done, and to have Bree and Birdie and Buddy and Bryan's whole family, that was amazing. And those are probably my two best moments in the business. Then sitting here with sitting here with Bryan and Birdie next to me in the scrum at Wembley Stadium, that was like as good as it gets. Now, the way Bryan's full-time wrestling career ended, it was very different than Sting's, but there's a lot of differences. Sting is never going to come back and wrestle. We've never said Bryan's never going to come back and wrestle. The full-time career is over, but I'm hopeful that someday, somehow, some way, Bryan will come back here. He's with us in spirit, and I hope it's not over. And with Sting, it is over, but it ended on the highest note possible. Bryan hit the highest note possible, and then it all got snatched away from us so quickly. So quickly. It was what we'd always wanted to see. It was what I at least always wanted to see, was for Bryan to have that moment. I always wanted that for him. And there's no way, especially because, he wasn't with us last year. This was the biggest moment AEW could put in front of Bryan Danielson. He seized it. He had this incredible main event with Swerve, this incredible moment with his family. He seized it, and then yes, it all got taken away from us. It all got snatched out from underneath us. But I hope someday that he'll be back and have another moment somehow, some way. And as for Sting, yeah, it was a beautiful night in the sun, and I think it was one of the real highlights for the company in a year where I honestly believe this has been the greatest year the company's ever had on pay-per-view. You could easily say, you could take 4 or 5 shows that we've done this year and hold them all up against our very, very best. And those two nights in particular, Sting at Revolution, Bryan Danielson at All In, those are two of the great nights, and then so many great moments here tonight. I think it was a great full year. But I'm glad you asked about both of them. I think the world of both those men, about Sting and Bryan. It's been such a huge year for AEW. We've got one more major pay-per-view event left. We've got AEW World's End coming up December 28th in Orlando, Florida. And between now and then, we'll have the Continental Classic. And World's End, it's an appropriate name this year because it will be the end of it'll be the beginning of a new era. Will be the end of the era of Dynamite only being a cable show. It will still be a cable show, but it will be a cable show and a streaming show. It'll be the first ever simulcast, and we'll carry that over to Collision. And that first week in January is going to be really, really big for us. I'm really, really grateful to everybody here. I hope some of you will be able to make it to World's End and be a part of that scrum. I really, 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 I say it on the media calls for anybody who didn't get to answer a question, but I really appreciate all of you coming here. And I think that when we started this whole thing, in fact, before John Moxley and even Kenny had arrived in the company for the very first show, before we had ever done our first show, so many of you covered AEW when we were just a bunch of guys in a parking lot. And look how far we've come. And it's all due to the fans and you giving us a chance, covering this like it was going to be a big entity and believing in what it could be and what it is now. This has been our most important year in the business, and we're on the verge of the most important things we'll do as a company for AEW. I really appreciate you all coming here to the pay-per-view and covering this, and I hope you all get home safe. Thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.